What's happening in Washington from an individual who is morally bankrupt has nothing to do with left versus right politics. It has everything to do with cruelty and intolerance, divisiveness and hate, only to enrich himself. That's all that it matters. It is incumbent upon all of us to lean into our moral sensibilities and to really understand what it means to have a strong... I know, I'm feeling a little... So forgive me if the mic starts acting up. What's going on right now in New York, and certainly here in Peekskill, we saw the story some months ago with Amy, the young woman and her 4-year-old. Horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Unconscionable. Unconscionable. It is happening right here in New York, the state of New York. We have counties across this state that are entering into 287G agreements. Local law enforcement officials being deputized to enforce Trump's dragnet right here in New York. Months ago, I called for a special session to pass New York for all. Months ago. We should already be in Albany right now. It should have been done. Make it clear that we're not here to cooperate with these racist, xenophobic immigrant policies. We're not here to be a gateway to hell. New York is a home, not a hunting ground. It pains me that here in New York, we haven't found the moral courage. We fall victim to this idea of political calculation. What's the right political move? In an effort to worry about what the other side might say or do in response. Oh, you're soft on immigration. See, that's the narrative that a lot of folks worry about in politics.
What's up, Chef?
Failing to understand that it's your absence of strength in your belief system, the absence of the courage of your convictions that's being tested and why you fold. But when you stand on those values, when you stand on those principles, you inspire others to do the same. And in fact, you actually might persuade those who are wavering to see the light. But when you cave in for political expediency, because you want to survive the political moment, you're revealing that you don't really care in the moment. And that's a profoundly hollow way to lead. We need individuals in this moment who will dig in, who are prepared to make the sacrifice and not calculate with modes of self-preservation. That's not the answer when you want to beat back the chaos agent in the morally bankrupt individual that is bigger than politics, who is Trump. That energy needs a different kind of energy. And politics, as usual, is not that right energy. So yes, that does mean passing New York for all. That also means making sure that we pass dignity, not detention.
Yes.
It also means making sure that we provide access to representation for those who are being brought before deportation proceedings. And if California's already figuring out how to ban masks on federal ICE agents, why can't New York figure out how to ban masks on ICE agents? Last time I checked, this is New York.
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
This is the literal multicultural, multi-tolerant epicenter of diversity, epicenter of equity, epicenter of tolerance. We are the world, literally. The world comes to New York, through New York. If we're not here to wave the flag for progress and diversity and unity and truth and love and compassion and decency, then who out there is? We have to set the bar, and it pains me. It absolutely breaks my heart to think that we're not out front leading in this moment.
Yeah, man.
Leading. So I want to make another point about these issues and how they relate to some of the larger dynamics, which I'm sure some of you already are aware. I don't believe it was a coincidence that when the big ugly bill passed in DC and they made slashing cuts to Medicaid and throw millions of folks here in New York off of insurance, and do that by giving tax cuts and breaks to the ultra wealthy and billionaires, that at the same time they made these draconian cuts, these devastating life and death cuts, they found the money to increase the money in investment in ICE. Like, don't lose the plot on that. While they are creating more economic pain and hardship for folks all across this country, irrespective of race, irrespective of immigrant status, irrespective of religion or sexual orientation, just if you happen to be living here in America, you're gonna catch economic hell. Unless you are well-to-do, you're gonna feel the pinch. Well, guess what? We need a distraction, don't we? We need a scapegoat. We need to blame communities of color. We need to otherize to help take your eyes off the ball, to help you begin to put your pain on them as opposed to the appropriate culprit, which is a government that is exploiting you economically, a government that is leaving you behind, be it in urban areas, be it in rural areas, it doesn't matter. So please, as we think about this issue and elevate the need to humanize our conversations and protect our immigrant community, do not fall for the smoke and mirrors. Do not fall for the classic divide and conquer strategy, but rather see the larger fight and how it's all connected to our economic pain. And not just through the lens of economics, see it through the lens of our history. You know, when I hear the president talk about ending birthright citizenship, you know what I also hear? I also hear a president who's trying to undermine a Reconstruction Amendment, the 14th Amendment. For those who know, we know that the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment, they came out of the Civil War, the Reconstruction Amendments. There would be no idea called birthright citizenship but for the 14th Amendment, because before these Reconstruction Amendments, there was no such thing as birthright citizenship. If you were Black in America, you might be free in one state and not free in the other. And then Dred Scott case came along, and that case said, we don't care where you live, none of you are free. And then there was a Civil War that was fought. That's right. And guess what? The North won. Union won. And then there were amendments that flowed from that, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, and the 14th Amendment, along with equal protection under the law, established birthright citizenship for all Americans. If you're born here, you're American. Now, what fight is that traced to? The fight for racial justice. And ever since the 14th Amendment has come into position on our Constitution, it's enabled every single advocacy fight thereafter. From the disability fight, the women's fight, immigration fight, now the immigrant fight, it's all rooted. So when you hear Trump talk about ending birthright citizenship, he's talking about white supremacy. Just to be clear. When he's talking about overturning the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act in Section 2, when he's talking about reworking the refugee program so that it only benefits white refugees and not folks from other parts of the world that are white. When that's happening, I think it's pretty clear what the end game is. And I just want all of us, Black, white, brown, all of us, to see the bigger picture. And understand that we're in this fight together. That's right. And that our economic hardship is one that we need to rally around, and beneath that, our shared humanity. Yes. That we have to double down on. Yes. That's the moment that we're in. I know it's hard to process sometimes how deep this goes, but it goes very, very deep.
Lieutenant Governor.
The other side of the coin, though, is I think it's happening because we are on the precipice of a new way. I think it's happening because we've reached the point where there's a real tipping point in our history, where this country is living up to its potential as a multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy, where everybody can be free, where everybody can be who they are. And that's a new phenomenon the world over. And America's been pushing that forward. And now we're in the middle of that fight, holding steady. And it's our time to keep pushing, not to regress, not to shrink in the face of the enormity of the fight, but rather to embrace the fact that we're here to take it on. And our history teaches us we can succeed.
Yes.
So I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about such an important issue when it comes to ICE and protecting our immigrant community, our neighbors, our brothers, our sisters, our fellow New Yorkers, and our children.
That's right.
And I'll just say this in closing, and then I'm happy to have a dialogue about anything you want to talk about. I really think about our children in this moment. I have 12-year-old boys. They're 12, yes, they're twins. You're trying to figure that out. Identical twin boys. Yes, and I take your prayers too.
Yeah.
I need them. But I never forget, they were watching the debate, one of the debates with Trump. One of my little guys looked at me. He said, "Dad," he said, I thought you said people who are leaders are nice people." Literally. He said, I thought you said they were like good people. They're not cruel. It's just him watching somebody. He's just watching. He doesn't seem like a nice guy. He doesn't seem like he's. And I thought to myself, not just for him, but all these kids and kids that are actually looking up and trying to figure out what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a public servant, what it means to be a good person. The fact that we have individuals out there right now with the biggest mouthpieces, the biggest bullhorns, being so ugly, being so divisive, being so disrespectful, with complete disregard for the truth, no integrity, no character.
Yes.
You know, we can disagree on any number of issues, but have some class.
Yeah.
Have some class. We're losing that. And I think Trump has been able to really feed into our base instincts and tear us apart. And I am determined, along with every single one of you, I think, in this room, to push back against that for the benefit of our children. I don't like the idea of our young kids growing up where that's being normalized. I don't like it.
Shout out to Shad.
And I worry about all our children in a world where that has been normalized 20, 30 years from now. And those kids are now adults. And some may have internalized it a bit too much. That's not a good outcome. We have a responsibility to change that direction.
Yeah.
And that starts here now, and that starts for sure
Yeah, man.
in New York.
Hey.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you. Like I said, I'm happy to talk about any number of issues. We'll get right to it. First hand's already up.
All right. Why, when ICE does something that is obviously illegal, like bust into an apartment building and arresting children, why aren't they being arrested?
Well, they are starting to be.
Yes.
We just got one happen. It just happened down in the city very recently. Matter of fact, the last couple of days, I think it just happened.
Good.
So there is an effort to do exactly that.
Tell me about it.
I
Tell me
just
about
did.
this guy. More. I want more. You're giving me hope.
I don't know all the specifics, to be honest. I just know that did happen. So I can't give you every single detail, but I know that there is an effort now to push more in that direction. I know that there's more of an effort, not just for local law enforcement to do that, but also for individuals who have the capacity to film, to demonstrate, and to put more and more pressure. At the end of the day, we have to have the ability to demonstrate that it will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. and create a culture, create an energy, create almost a chilling effect for that. Now, obviously, passing laws like New York for All, right, will certainly help to do that. And I think making sure that there is a posture within the law enforcement itself to recognize that its job, right, as commanded from leadership, its job is to protect and serve New Yorkers.
That point.
And that's the
That
job,
point.
right? The job is to protect and serve New Yorkers, not to protect and serve ICE. And so when ICE is doing something that is violating the rights of a New Yorker, it is well within the rights of our local law enforcement to protect New Yorkers. And that should be the energy moving forward. And I anticipate that it certainly will be from where I stand, and I think it's a growing energy moving around the state.
Yes.
Yes.
I have been in this community for 10 years, but I am born and raised in New York in the 70s in the South Bronx.
All right.
It was a very difficult time. I just want a clarification because I believe my own mayor, I believe my own city, I believe my own state, when we are declared a sanctuary city. We are a sanctuary city. If you want to run for governor, what does that mean in New York?
No, this is not the
No
mayor.
one
This
cares
is someone
that
running
we,
for
the
governor,
people, decided
Lieutenant
we are a sanctuary.
Governor
What
Delgado.
happens to our people that are hiding in the shadows? And no one, the elected officials, are not standing up and saying, wait, we decided as a people that we will not allow that.
Yeah. Well, first I will say,
Are we or are we not?
right. I
This
think
is
that there are different parts of the state.
Lieutenant
and
Governor
different types of
Delgado,
laws,
who will be
right? There's
running
no,
for office. I'm sorry, I
absolute,
can't type back
blanket
right now.
coverage,
Can you
right?
hear me?
I do think that what we can do, and I think 287G gets us
Thank you for
there, is
responding.
it
I
does
see
create
your
a blanket
questions.
safety net, both in terms of banning certain types of agreements, like 287G agreements, that you have now up to 10 counties across the state of New York that are entering into these agreements, right? So that just needs to be taken off the table altogether, but also about sharing information and with the modes in which information is shared. You have certain towns that are entering into agreements where they're allowing ICE to train on their shooting ranges. But these things are happening in different ways all across the state, that the state can make it very clear, make it very plain to any locality across the state. If we ain't seeing a judicial warrant, right, some type of legal basis, right, there's nothing happening here. There's no cooperation happening here. There's no sharing. There's nothing that's going to allow you to come in and cause havoc on our communities. Keep in mind, the thing that blows my mind is we're not talking about, and I even hate to frame it this way because it's almost as if I'm buying into the narrative, but I just want to be clear. I think it's important to say the numbers, the data, so just it makes the point. We just saw this, the numbers came out, I think, a few days ago. The vast majority of folks, right, whether it's in New York or across the country, that have been terrorized by ICE don't even have any type of criminal record.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not even suggesting that's like, right, but the idea though, that the vast majority, over 60%, don't even have
Right.
a record. So what are we doing?
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
Right.
When you're just sweeping up people
Right.
without any type of background issues or record or anything, and you're basing it on profiling.
Absolutely.
So that's the only way you can do it. You look like you're a problem. You look like you shouldn't be in our community. That is what's happening across communities right now in New York and across the country. Let that sit in. That's being normalized. And not just normalized, it's being activated by the leader of the country.
And the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court. And a Congress that has completely capitulated.
Bootlickers.
Hey, go work with them on the ground.
So the point is, yes, there's real work that still needs to be done at the state level. Like for example, in the city, there's access to representation for certain income levels. I'd like to see that we have representation provided no matter where you are, no matter what your income, right? That's the kind of thing we need to be doing statewide, right? So we still allow, federal ICE agents to wear masks in New York. Ban that. That shouldn't happen. I don't understand why you need to wear a mask to enforce the law. The only time people usually wear a mask is when they're breaking the law.
Boom.
Oh, yes, sorry.
You talked about New York for all, but I heard you talk about another bill, something not detention, and I wasn't familiar with that, so I was just wondering if you could describe that bill and what it does.
So dignity not detention prevents the state or localities from holding immigrants in cooperation with ICE, right? So one might think, oh, well, it might be good to maybe try to have a space to keep them here. But the fact of the matter is, it is not our job to enforce immigration. That's the federal government's job.
Right.
And we're not here to enable them to do something that, and as it's proven to be the case, more often than not, unlawful in the manner it is being done. And so it's a way for us, a number of other states have done this too, to say, we're not going to participate in the holding of folks who are being detained, right? In any fashion for that matter, because the systemic realities are unlawful. But it's not just on the public side, not just the state and the local side. Importantly, it's also private detentions, right? Which are outside the scope of what the state and locality can do. It's saying no private jails can't house either, right? And so that creates a blanket. So the only place they can be housed or detained, if you will, are federal buildings, right? That fall within their jurisdiction. It's just another way to mitigate the scale of harm they can cause. Like if we're actively saying, oh, we can put them here, we can put them there, we can put, it's like opening up, the door to say, come on, let's go ahead and have whatever, do whatever you like, put them wherever you want. And we're saying, no, this is another mode of making it clear. We're not gonna cooperate in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna make sure did you, my own, yes.
So New York for All did not even get to the floor for a vote
That is
in
correct.
the assembly, and I believe we have a super majority of Democrats in our government. So what's going on?
I can tell you what's going on. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Part two. What has Kathy Hochul said? Has she said anything about New York for All? Like, what is
Do you know if she
going
said
on?
anything?
I haven't heard
Right.
anything about it.
I mean, I think that's it, so, right? The answer is she said nothing, although she said nothing publicly. I happen to be Lieutenant Governor of New York, and I happen to understand how things move or don't move in the legislative body. And as much as we like to think that, the legislative body can just go and do whatever it likes, and it can to some degree, it also helps when you have a partner in the executive, right? That's aligned with what you want to see happen.
Yeah.
But when that partner in the executive signals in some way, shape, or form, we're not aligned, where does that leave the leadership in the legislative body? Tough spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's why leadership matters.
Yes, it does.
That's why the executive matters, because the executive sets the tone. And ultimately, if you have somebody in the executive who's more concerned about the political fallout of taking that position, whatever it may be, because Stefanik is looming in the wings, right? Versus saying, you know what, I need to protect New Yorkers, then you get a situation where there's a chill that happens within the legislative body and it's stuck there. I know a lot of folks inside the state Senate and the state assembly who would like to see, and they've been calling for it, who've been calling for a special session, who stood with me and have called for a special session publicly. I know. And yet, because of the absence of a clear voice from the top saying, let's go, come back to Albany, let's get this done, it's stalling out. It's stalling out. Now, keep the pressure up. And I want you to understand that's what I'm doing. As Lieutenant Governor, holding the governor and holding Albany accountable. Forget the campaign stuff. As Lieutenant Governor, I'm leveraging the power that I have, the power that the people gave me.
Amen.
Politics be damned.
Amen.
Honestly, be damned. Because it's bigger than politics in this moment. It's about leveraging your power to the fullest extent that you can for those who need it the most in this moment.
Can you put pressure on the majority speaker?
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm
How do we
doing.
help you do that? How do we get behind you to help you do that? What do you
What do
need?
I need? Listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, what we're doing right now in this room, right?
Okay.
The ability for me, I'm trying to explain this in a way that speaks to both dynamics. I am running for governor, right? Obviously. I'm running for governor. For those who don't know, maybe you don't know, but I'll tell you if you don't know, right? But separate and apart from that piece, a big component of being lieutenant governor, because I'm an independently elected official by the people, is to figure out how to leverage being a lieutenant governor for the betterment of the people who gave me the power. Not as just a mouthpiece
Yes.
for something that I believe is only maintaining a broken system.
Thank you.
I don't believe that power is self-legitimate. I believe if anything, without proper guardrails, it is self-corrupting. And we've seen that in partisan, party-based politics. It's not limited to one party. And the only time you can really break through that is if you have the ability to challenge it,
Yes.
to take it on, to hold a mirror up to it. Even if there'll be folks who say, well, that's not politically the smart thing to do. It's better to just fall in line. It's better to just keep your place. That's a safe move, but I'd argue it's a move that is about political expediency, not about moral convictions. And so for me, when you say, how can you help? There's different ways you can help, right? But more importantly, I think understand that being in this room right now, whether it's the governor, whether it's leadership in Albany, when they see someone like me out there elevating this issue in a room full of New Yorkers who are asking these kinds of questions, it only turns the heat up. Believe me, it turns the heat up.
That's right.
When your lieutenant governor is in a room full of New Yorkers elevating an issue that no one, or I shouldn't say no one, that some folks in Albany would rather not talk about. So keep showing up. Keep figuring out how to elevate these issues. Tell folks, Lieutenant Governor came by and had a whole meet and greet about New York for All. Haven't heard from the governor. But get that out.
Yeah, man.
Because that's how you put pressure on the system. That's how you hold the system accountable. I feel like part of my obligation is to give you that opportunity, to give you the chance to leverage me for the betterment of you and the community that we want to protect and uplift. This is bigger than the politics of it all.
Yes, it
Who
is.
should we call?
How do we get it?
Well, call your legislator, call your state assemblyman, call your state senator, call
Call the governor?
Call the governor. Call them all.
Then
Call them all.
tell us to do that, we will do that. I hear you.
Yes,
Tell us.
call them. Call the governor. Call your leaders. Call anybody who's in a position that is there to represent your interests. Call them, write them, voice your dissent, protest, do all of that. Engage, engage, and engage. That is how. And then invite them to engage with you. Keep a record of accountability. Extend invitations to have conversations and make it clear if they're being responsive or not. Ball's in their court. Make that clear that you want to engage, and it's on the leadership's time to figure out if they have it in them to show up. Yes. Hello.
Peekskill. I am an immigrant and I'm worried that SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, is about to take away my citizenship so they can grab on my property and deport me. And I'm like thinking of like, why do I have to plan out what happens to my assets if I'm deported for a civil infraction? It's outrageous how many constitutional rights are being violated right now. I'm sorry, everybody, I'm about to get nerdy. These are all constitutional violations, and not enough lawsuits are being brought about, like, where are the people who are being relocated so their lawyers can't find them to give them immigration advice? Like, why can't your lawyer find you? My colleagues at my law firm cannot find their clients. Sometimes I go to other states. What are we doing to stop that constitutional habeas problem? Like, what happened? Pam Bondi said something outrageous. The government owns your property if you're deported. That is a taking and an excessive crime. What did I do? What did they do? It's not even a crime. You're gonna take their cars, their houses, their bank accounts. What if you're deported and you say, okay, let me liquidate my things before Pam Bondi comes for them? You're gonna pay triple taxes. You're gonna be taxed when you sell your stuff. The IRS is gonna tax you again after New York taxes you, and then your home country where you were born is gonna tax you again. There's almost nothing left if you try to take your assets to another country. What are we doing for New Yorkers who invested their whole lives in this country and are about to lose everything and start over penniless in another place?
No, listen, these are the stakes. You know, I was just in Mineola, and I met a father at a anti-ICE protest calling for the end of the 287G agreement that Nassau County has. And a gentleman there said his son in November just disappeared. He doesn't know where he is. Hasn't heard from him. He's 20, 21, 22 years old. He's also noted that he's needed mental assistance, and he's terrified about where he has no idea. He's called his congressperson, trying to figure out where to go. He's just disappeared. His child just disappeared. There's levels to the way this is working. At the federal level, we're really in a very hard spot. I can't sugarcoat. There's nothing I can do to make this sound any less bad than it is. We are being governed by criminals. So, yes, and we do. This is happening. And there have been a number of suits that have been filed in various situations, not just on the immigration space, but in the congressional appropriation space, and any number of different scenarios where there's been success, depending on the structure of the court, and the judges on the bench, and there's some that have not been. There have been victories and there have been victories. This is even the legal dynamics are contingent in some respects on the parties on the bench. And obviously, if it goes up to the Supreme Court, as you started this question off, we got our hands tied behind our back because of the very composition of the highest court in the land. There's no higher court. There's nowhere else to appeal. That's it. That's the highest final arbiter. And so, and I hate to make this so bleak because I don't want to make it seem like that, but I am stressing to you that that's why the states right now in this moment are so important. That's why what Tish James is doing in this moment is so important, right? It's important. And that's why she's under attack, right? The idea is we have to leverage our legal system to the fullest extent. We have, and she's getting successful wins. We have to be in a position to resist legally at every count. But the reality is, it is unrelenting. It is a nonstop spigot of just cruelty and illegality. You know, hand over fist, it just keeps coming. And so we have to continue to push back against that and lean in, leverage our legal system, and pass laws here in New York that fortify us, that give us as much of a force field, if you will, that we can have to repel what we know is coming.
I'm just gonna, I have looked at your platform, but I hope your ideas are there. So
Yes.
I can delve into them some more about how my concerns will be addressed through the larger policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that I've spoken about in terms of the legislation, some of the stuff is a combination of what we do via law, like literally passing legislation, which I talked about. Some of it is just literally the enforcement of the laws we have on the books through the Attorney General's office, which is happening, right? And I think, you know, I get the feeling sometimes, and I get it, people want to believe that we can rectify this all at once. But it's not a sort of panacea. There's no like one clear thing that can just resolve all this, given the power dynamics, given the nature of the fact that elections do matter, and the fact that the matter is we have a Republican-controlled Congress, we have an overtly partisan Supreme Court, and we have an individual in Trump who is who he is. And I think those create real difficult challenges that have a profound effect on how states can have to operate and maneuver. But make no mistake about it, the state is gonna hold the line, the state is gonna fight, the state is gonna lean in and put resources to protect all of our schools, our nonprofits, our immigrant communities, all of which are under siege, our communities being thrown off of health insurance, our hospitals now subject to closure as a result. I mean, we're experiencing pain all across the board here potentially because of what's coming down the pipeline. We got money that's congressionally appropriate to New York that's being withheld. Right? That's unconstitutional, right? But we gotta go to court. We just can't take the money. We gotta go through a process and hope that the legal system works itself out to that end. And that's always the challenge with trying to go through that legal process. It is a time laborious endeavor. Yes.
So I'm going to switch gears to redistricting, and we're sitting in Peekskill, which is going to be the home of one of the most hotly contested national congressional elections in the country. We saw what California did. We just saw the recent decision of the Supreme Court with the Texas redistricting case. If you are elected governor, or if you're the nominee for governor, will you run on a platform where you'll allow mid-districting you'll call for mid-decade redistricting?
Yes.
Okay. That's the
Right?
because
Yes.
control of Congress is so
No, it's everything.
Yeah.
And what Texas is doing, and again, this speaks to my point. You gotta understand, like, what the point I was making earlier about the racial undertone of everything. When you see these southern states, making aggressive moves in this fashion, and they're being enabled when the Supreme Court fails to protect the Voting Rights Act and allows for the Voting Rights Act to get gutted, right? That is basically a window into what I was saying about the way in which there's an effort of a sort of pre-Civil War era, pre-Reconstruction era. It's like a lurch from the past, where once democracy gets to a point where everybody's starting to count, democracy doesn't work anymore. We don't like that idea. We don't want democracy anymore when democracy really counts for everybody. We like democracy when it only protects some, right? And so as we've gotten to a point where democracy is starting to really count for everybody, there are folks who have a more difficult way of understanding that and choose to figure out how to manipulate the system in a fashion, or cheat, right? To figure out whatever it takes to bend it backwards as opposed to, and that puts us in a tough spot, by the way. And this is, I think your question about the mid-decade redistricting is a challenging one, because at the end of the day, it's like the constant, superhero villain movie where the question of how do you maintain your moral authority? And what are you willing to give up? And how much do you have to give up to the point where in doing so you end up hollowed out yourself, right? And where do you find that line between fighting for something and sacrificing something and what you're willing to give up to protect something bigger? But in the end, are you giving up too much? And I don't pretend to know that existential question. All we can do is fight in the moment and make sure that we give it everything we got when the stakes are as high as they are. Yes.
I see in Wikipedia that your executive email and your phone got taken away by the governor. Is that true?
You're doing a little homework since you've been here?
Yeah.
So the question was my executive chamber phone and executive chamber computer and some of my executive offices taken away from me by the governor? And the answer is yes. When I announced some months back that I was not seeking re-election, not that I was challenging the governor, just that I had decided, you know what, I think I'm good serving alongside the governor moving forward. I'll serve out my term, but I'm not going to run for re-election with the governor. Just doing that resulted in my staff being 85%, 90%, 95% of my staff being moved out of, if not pushed out of, the executive lieutenant governor's office. So I had no staff. And then I had 2 executive offices inside the chamber. Those were taken away. But because I also preside over the Senate in my capacity as lieutenant governor, I still do have an office through the Senate side. And I get 1 staffer through the Senate side. And so I do have a footprint still, very much so, as lieutenant governor by virtue of my role as a presiding officer of the Senate. But I want to be clear about what I just laid out for those who are trying to piece it all together. We talk a lot about folks abusing power in Washington. Talk a lot about folks who take their power on the official side to exact political retribution on their opponents. That is what's happening in New York. Okay? That's what's happening. And here's what's really wild about it. There are certain circles inside of political life that have normalized this dimension of politics so much that they don't bat an eye. It's like, well, it's politics. It's just the way it is. And to me, it's that type of mentality that ultimately leads to the most grotesque version of that in the form of Trump, where you see a 2028 hat sitting on the Oval Office desk. Like, that is the most grotesque version of what I just described is happening right here in New York. And I think part of the problem is we have a lot of folks in politics who are in it to make a career out of it. And so once you want to make a career, once you want to last long enough, it becomes less about serving and more about holding on to the power and doing whatever it takes to hold on to the power. The good news from where I sit is I actually had a life before politics. I was
Talk about it. That's right. That's right.
I was a lawyer for 7 years. Before that, some of you may know I was a hip hop artist for 5 years. Right after law school, my parents were surprised that was my choice. And before that, I studied overseas. I got my graduate degree in philosophy and political science. This is all after growing up in a working class family in Schenectady. My parents worked for General Electric and grew up in the church and cutting coupons and putting clothes on layaway. So I lived a story of upward mobility. And I feel very fortunate to have had the success that I've been able to have in life because of my parents' jobs and because of the education that I got. But I'm not wedded to politics because of that. I was compelled to serve when Trump won in 2016. That was it. I changed my life. My wife, we changed our entire lives when Trump won. And we said, I'm gonna walk away from the law firm. I'm gonna take off the golden handcuffs. I'm gonna jump in the arena and just figure out what the hell's going on because it don't seem right to me. And it's been a wild ride ever since. A wild ride, but we're still here. Thank you, sir. Yes. All right.
Hi, how are you? So, my question is about education.
Yes.
Since Donnie is now the mayor, the issue of mayoral control, because with a lot of this New York City, a lot of education system, a lot of other states look at us, and not the state too, I see what we're doing, and what people are doing. So if you were, you became governor, what would you, right now, we have mayoral control.
Right.
I guess the question's kind of open, how do you feel about it, what do you think, whatever, your opinion.
I mean, my views on education, I'd rather not locate it just in the question of mayoral control. I mean, my understanding, and I'm hopefully being accurate, my understanding is that Mamdani is trying to, is acknowledged that the buck stops with him, but that there's still a dimension of independence between the body and him that he's trying to figure out how to strike the right balance, whatever that might mean, right? And that's for him to figure out. And I support any process that is about trying to be innovative and reform oriented in the end. I think we gotta be in a position where we're trying to figure out how to do things differently and how to have more accountability in the system that is shared across the board. What I care most about when it comes to education, point blank period, is our children.
Yes.
And are they being educated at the level that they should be educated? Are they learning at the level that they should be learning? Whether it's reading, whether it's writing, whether it's arithmetic. And the reality is they are not. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are doing everything we can to properly invest in our school systems, but also bring accountability into our school systems and make sure that we have a system that really enables our young people and our teachers to succeed. And ultimately, we can't do that if there's also persistent systemic inequities across the system. And the way we typically fund education is, I think, profoundly inequitable because so much of it is rooted in property taxes. So much of it is rooted in the extent of the tax base. And so if you have communities across the state of New York that can leverage their tax base in such a way to provide extensive opportunities, enrichment programs, before school, after school, all types of different things for their kids. Meanwhile, you have other communities that are barely able to put up a computer lab in their school because they just don't have the resources. Then how does education reflect being the great equalizer or the gateway to opportunity? We have to reimagine, especially with the Department of Education cuts coming at the federal level. The states have a responsibility to figure out how to really leverage money and resources in a far more intentional way back into our public school system and devise a way in partnership with the school system, with the districts, in a way that brings more accountability. The other piece to keep in mind with New York that's interesting is that unlike other agencies in the state of New York, the Department of Education, the DOE is actually governed and overseen by the Board of Regents. It's the one agency where the governor's office is limited in how it can really effectuate change. Obviously, the budget is the one piece where there's a way that the state can engage, but from a curriculum standpoint, from how you engage with teachers and that is very much in a different body, in a way that as I've heard from previous governors and current governors, that can be limiting in terms of what you can do as a governor to really better the educational process.
Yes, I agree with you. There's only one problem. When we're talking about ICE has made hell for our kids.
Oh, yes.
And no one, I work, obviously, I'm saying I work there, and we had to educate parents on how to defend themselves and how to prepare, and kids weren't showing up to school because they were scared. And so the governor or the state has the power to do something about that. And my question was, why did it?
What you mean in terms of just actually creating more of a firewall in terms of security, in terms of more of a local law enforcement presence? I think these are all incredibly important points. I don't think there should be ever any tolerance for any type of ICE presence anywhere near our schools, anywhere near our schools. And I think there should be, to your point, and this is something that I think you're getting at, there should be more of a comprehensive, proactive, systemic plan that everybody's bought into across the system, across the state. This is our posture, that every single school district is on board with and understands. And if it means actually, to your point, especially when we know there are hotspots, right? Okay, let's move some personnel or law enforcement here. Let's put some state troopers here. Like, how do we move the law enforcement around in a way that presents a posture of strength and serves the public?
Yes.
Let's go one more so we have time to mingle.
I have actually a kind of continuation question. I work for family engagement in my district, city district, school. I'm really concerned. Parents think keeping the kids at home is more safe than sending them at school. But after I hear all you have saying, should I be Should I feel powered and confident to tell them, listen, I was having dinner with you today. Guess what? We are safe. Better send your kids to school because it's not going to be as easy as they coming out the door and your kid is going to open the door for them.
Well, I mean, I would say I would not base it on this conversation. Like, I wouldn't say that we're giving this discussion too much credit, right? I think that there are, and I think there's more work to be done across the state. Obviously, if I thought that we were doing everything we should be doing, then, I don't think this discussion would be even necessary. We could be doing a lot more. And I think that it is part of my job and part of this room's job to continue to elevate these issues and put more stress on the system to say we can really effectuate these policies. We don't have right now a statewide, school mapped out system where we're saying we're going to really protect. We have laws, obviously, we know what is permissible in terms of know your rights, which do mean they can't come on public spaces in that fashion without certain documentation, right? Like, we know these things. It's important upon all of us to be able to educate folks all across the system to that end. But the system and the laws are what they are, but it's how we proactively present them to the communities on the ground and the stakeholders on the ground. And I think there's more work to be done in that regard. So I would love to be able to say every kid, and listen, I want all of our kids to go off to school and learn, and I want to do everything we can to protect our children in that process. And I'm certainly going to do everything I can, to elevate the voices of our families, the voices of our concerns, our residents here in New York, to make sure we're talking about this issue. So that is how I would frame it. I would frame it, people are working on this, we're fighting for it. I would direct them to know your right. Zoran put out, I think, a really good video today where he broke down the Know Your Rights campaign, help folks who I'm sure saw that and were comforted by just being empowered with information. Just having the information can be powerful. And sometimes you saw it, right? I thought it was good. I think that type of, and leveraging his platform where everybody's still on, the eyes are still watching, folks who maybe typically don't watch or follow what political actors say are now watching, and to leverage it in that fashion, I think is a real game changer. I think it's a real shift in how we think about what political leaders can do in this moment, where they're speaking literally to the vulnerable, right? They're speaking literally to the folks who are on the margins, rather than speaking for the rich and the powerful, who have their hands in their pockets. Right? That's the shift that I think we're in the middle of right now.
Yes, we are.
And how do we?
Come and see me after if I could get your name, because the ACLU is looking at doing a Know Your Rights training.
There you go.
For educators.
Yes.
So let me just say this, I'm bringing it home. I'm bringing Toya, I'm bringing it home. I'll be around for a little while, right? So, but I'm supposed to bring it home now, right? So that's what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna bring it home. I would say thank you. I think the Zoran point that I just made and the whole idea of a new era, I think it's a very interesting one to conclude on. I believe that what's happening right now in New York, and I'd argue for that matter across the country, is a strong desire for new, bolder, more direct types of voices that don't just play politics. And I think people are really hungry for it. I think that's been made clear, not just in the city, but in mayor's races across the state, from Albany to out to Buffalo, Syracuse. You see races that have led to individuals who've ascended that are more bold in their posture economically, that really speak to the economic pain that people are feeling, whether it's in the housing space, the healthcare space, whether it's in the childcare space. People really are desperate to want real answers and solutions. And I'm telling you right now, this energy needs to also make its way to Albany. Otherwise, it'll be the roadblock, right? And it'll run into a buzzsaw, because the governorship is a very powerful position. And so absence a change in that position, then a lot of this bubbling up of success, or the bubbling up of what's possible, the bubbling up of a new era, of a new energy, will be undermined. And I'm here to tell you that I'm here to be your partner in that desire to want to push through a new day, desire to want to make a new way. And I want to put something on your radar. So it's not just speak, and you understand the power of why this moment is so special. And I do think it's, speaks to sort of the magnitude of the moment. This is the first time in New York's history that a statewide candidate can qualify for public matching dollars. First time. The reason why Zoran was successful in part was because he could rely on public matching contributions. That made his candidacy possible in many respects. This is the first time in the state's history. And that doesn't just mean it's powerful for purposes of campaigning, but imagine, because I've never taken corporate PAC money, going back to when I was in Congress, never. So imagine for the first time in New York, having a governor that's never taken corporate PAC money and that is funded and supported by the public matching campaign, not beholden to any entrenched, deep-pocketed special interest, only beholden to the people. Imagine for a second what that kind of energy would feel like in Albany at this very moment. So, for those who don't know, every contribution between $5 and $250 gets matched in New York 6-1. A $5 contribution becomes a $35 contribution. I have to hit 2 thresholds to unlock the full available amount, which would be $3.5 million. We are more than 75% of the way to our threshold. We are pushing, ideally before the end of the year, top of next year, to be able to announce that we qualify going into 2026 as a public matching campaign. So for anybody who wants to be a part of this, hopefully history-making campaign, that is exactly how you can do it in any number of ways as well. But that public matching piece is so deep in terms of what it can mean. Again, not just for the success of the campaign, but for the success of how we can govern in New York. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I'll be around and hang out.
We are here live in Peekskill at Ruben's, and we have just heard our future governor, Lieutenant Governor Delgado. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out to Shadow Dio. I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to sharing more about him on his journey. God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in to It's a Movement TV.
And I've heard him speak twice before, and it's just